Good day, I'm Junior Researcher Adam Southgate, and today we will be covering a report written by a gamekeeper about an unknown entity. I'd appreciate that all hunters please subscribe as to not miss any future lectures, and also, if you enjoy the lecture and find them informative, please like the video and click the bell to ensure you do not miss any future announcements. I would also be very happy to hear your thoughts, views and stories of your own interactions with the monsters of the spheres in the comment area of this video. Also, I'm always ready to answer any questions you may have, and please share these lectures with any hunters you feel would benefit from them. So, to begin, as always, we'll start with our general announcements. Firstly, and as was alluded to within the interview I conducted with Thraig Newydd, work on the construction of our new facility is well underway. While at first it was only planned to simply be a containment site similar to one Goch resided within, since then the idea has been expanded. The Order of Merlin has never had a centralized base of operations, preferring to work as many smaller bases. This is mostly due to historical reasons, where the Order had to continue to function while also hiding from more mundane threats that were aware of our existence. Since this has not been an issue for some time now, the High Druid feels that having a strong centralized location will bolster our legitimacy with the other anti-incursion organizations. Now, we don't want you to worry, your local Order office will still be running as usual. The idea is to have a place where all our needs are met, and where we can plan operations without the difficulty of being on separate sides of the country. This new facility will contain research labs, large-scale barracks, training facilities for hunters, conference rooms for Earth to meet, and even apartments for live-in staff like myself. I look forward to covering this new facility in more detail in the near future. Secondly, the perpetual tear in Snowdonia National Park has re-emerged as an issue. For those not in the know, during last year a breach point was discovered that failed to close. Typically, when an entity breaches, the point where they breached through, the tear, or breach point, immediately closes. In this case, that failed to happen. It was shortly discovered that the tear could be travelled through to the sphere on the other side after a camera was sent through. On the other side, the camera recorded a wooded area and also people not too dissimilar from Homo floresiensis, only covered in strange growths. A research team was established and a base created within the sphere that turned out to be one of the many subspheres. The world the team found themselves upon was similar to our own, exactly in the case of geography, but one where humanity had never evolved. As the expedition progressed, they discovered the same strange growths that were upon Homo floresiensis were also covering certain vegetation. Shortly after, the team went missing and hunters were sent in to establish what transpired. After following the trail, the hunters were attacked en masse by a living wave of Homo floresiensis. The growths, as it transpired, were eyes that had attached themselves to the diminutive people. After this event, the tear was quarantined and the base abandoned. However, in recent days, the same growths have been appearing on our side of the rift. They are currently contained within a steel box that was placed around the tear. However, the sheer number of these things has filled the box so much that our camera within was crushed. While we do not worry that these things could break the box, we do wish to err on the side of caution in this matter. We would like a team of 20 hunters above the rank of apprentice to volunteer as extra security at the site until the matter is resolved. This will most likely be a low-activity assignment for any who take it on. However, we would rather have you there if something does transpire. If you are interested in this contract, you can either contact me via the comment section of this lecture or contact your local Order office. Sign-up closes on the 26th of January at 8 AM Greenwich Mean Time. Of the 51 entities that we've covered so far, and yes, there are many more, they are all the ones that we have a great deal of information on, due to either their commonality or due to the size of the impact they have upon our world. There are a great many more entities that we know next to nothing about, whether this is due to their rarity or to them being mostly benign. As an example, for every 10 confirmed entities reported in by the gamekeepers, there are 16 unknown entities also reported in. For the most part, these entities never reach the bounty stage, as we do not wish to risk our hunters against entities that they know nothing about. Our standard procedure for such cases is quarantine. You may have seen in your time buildings with the windows boarded up or large fences around them. These are quarantine sites, where the entity within was not identifiable and thus not safe to attempt to eliminate. Now, there are some cases where an unknown will be eliminated by experienced hunters who exploit a universal weakness. This is able to be accomplished when the sphere the unknown entity comes from is able to be ascertained, and with that sphere comes an inherent vulnerability, such as cold iron with the Fae. However, in most cases we are left with little answers. We attempt to gather information on these entities by passive observation, but it is a long, slow process. Our gamekeepers, as our first responders, write thousands of reports on entities every year. 60 to 70% of these are listed as unknown entities. However, I feel as though there is a great deal to learn from these written reports. Not only about the entities themselves, but also about the work the gamekeepers do to make what we in the research community and you within the hunters community do. So today I will be reading for you the unedited written report of one of our retired gamekeepers, who has consented to me to do so as long as I do not mention his name. 17th of August 1971, 11:42 p.m. Tonapandi. I received a call from the local police due to suspected anomalous activity. When I arrived, they had thankfully vacated the building. There's usually one who hasn't been clued in yet who refuses to follow the procedure, but in this case everyone thankfully did what they were supposed to. I introduced myself to the senior officer, giving him the handshake. I still don't understand why they insist on doing it. We have ID badges now. The building itself was at one point a pub. It closed down, I think, 30 years ago. I'll have to dig into why. The police informed me that it had recently been purchased and converted into a home, and up until that point it had been left empty. They counted 3 bodies inside, all within the upstairs master bedroom. The state the bodies were in was why they called me. As I entered the living room, I took notes of the location. The furniture was a mismatch of different period antique oak. They even had a church pew against one of the walls. The wall itself was a sickly yellow with pale green splotches in random locations. As I moved through the home, I was struck by how quiet it was. I should have been able to hear the police talking outside, or for that matter, their sirens, and yet there was nothing but my own footsteps on the wooden floors. I've marked this down as a quieting field. The sight in the bedroom was, well, typical for this job. As the police reported, 3 victims. Each lay upon the ground, their limbs completely destroyed. Taking a look at the closest victim, it was a male in his mid-30s. Both his arms and legs were absent of bone, however their skin and muscle, while still attached, appeared to have been torn into ragged strips. His torso, though absent of the extreme damage afflicted upon his limbs, was covered in a large number of holes, similar to bullet wounds. I checked the other 2 over, male 50s to 60s and female 50s to 60s, and both had the same injuries. Looking the room over, I noticed similar holes as was in the victim's torso within the walls, floor, and ceiling. Using the tweezers within my kit, I managed to extract something from within one of these holes. I didn't need it analyzed to know what it was. Bone. Looking the scene over, my hypothesis became that some entity had literally exploded the bones within the victim's limbs, firing these shards out with a large amount of ballistic force. The victims most likely died of both blood loss and shock. Listing the 4 main spheres in order of likelihood, it would be the Fae, the Entropic, the Abrahamic, and the Eldritch. I will need to spread iron filings around the residence to rule out a Fae. Along with this, I've catalogued the furniture and will need to chase up their origins in case a violent incident took place around them in the past. I'm not sure if these items were family heirlooms or purchased recently from an antique shop. I'll need to reach out to living family members to ascertain this. I will also again need to research the reason the original pub closed. It's possible that a similar event took place at the location that was never reported to us. I've asked the police to maintain the cordon around the building and to keep watch for any sign of movement leaving the pub. I will continue my investigation tomorrow, firstly by hopefully visiting a living relative, secondly spreading iron filings throughout the home, and thirdly by administering the candle test upon the furniture. I've sent a request to the Order to dig into why the pub originally closed. 9th of October, 1971, 9 a.m, Caerphilly Miners Hospital, Orders Wing. I honestly didn't think I'd be continuing this case. A good friend of mine and my once teacher took it upon himself to lock the investigation into the pub until my recovery. He established that the entity was fixed to the location first, so the Order approved his request. They fitted me with one of those Pinocchio things, though it's been a right pain to learn how to use. My physiotherapist tried to explain it to me, but I'll be honest, I don't really get it. They said I need to stop thinking of my arm as a piece of my body, and more as my assistant who doesn't like taking orders, but will preempt my needs. It's a mess, but it could have been much worse. To recap from my report, and so I can go over the facts again, on the morning of the 18th of August I was contacted by the local police of Tonopandi. They had located a living relative of the three. The individual hadn't been informed of what had transpired, so that I would be given the opportunity to come up with the most useful cover story. In the end, I went with a break-in gone horribly wrong, with the suspect being armed with a pistol and killing the family. This also opened up the avenue of asking specific questions about the furniture under the pretext of establishing motive via the worth of said furniture. She took the news understandably hard. She was the two older people's daughter, and the 30-odd-year-old man was her brother. I did my best to comfort her, but, well, anyone who's had to lie about a cause of death will know. Thankfully, she was stronger than she looked and managed to answer some key questions before it became too much for her. The pub had been bought by the son as a gift to the parents. Apparently the building meant a lot to them as it's where they met when it was still operating as a pub. He was a working class kid who escaped the mine and started to make some real money, so he bought the place, got it renovated and furnished. All the furniture was bought from around the UK, but thankfully she herself had helped with picking out the items, so we were able to establish a list of locations to investigate. My day went wrong when I headed to spread the cold iron filings. I opened the front door and reached my hand through to toss them in, when it became locked in place. I experienced a sensation not too dissimilar to growing pains from when I was a kid. However, these quickly intensified to an unbearable degree. Piecing together what was about to happen, I closed the door as much as I could between myself and my arm. The pain was probably the worst I've experienced in my life, though my time in the Rifles had its fair share of contenders. Thankfully, my left arm was lost instead of my right. I'm just glad I took that lesson on board from my mentor. If you need to stick your hand into danger, don't use the one you write with. A lesson he had to learn the hard way. He still has trouble with the letter G. 10th of October, 1971, 12:24 p.m, Tonopandi. All the evidence is leaning towards an entropic entity. The Eldritch and Abrahamic spheres are unlikely to begin with, plus apart from each of their own flavors of madness, their physical effects tend to be more transformative rather than outright destructive. I mean, it's destructive from our perspective, but in a material sense, they warp one thing into another, they don't blow things up. A Fey entity is out simply due to a Fey not being able to sit still for this long. There is of course the possibility of a subsphere entity, however, that is far more difficult to confirm. It's better to proceed under the idea that it's an entropic entity until that's ruled out. With the list I gathered from the daughter, the Order were able to establish the history of some of the furniture, though none were a good match. There was a, throne made of wood, though I can't imagine it being comfortable. Apparently it's not actually an antique, being made in the 60s in some artisanal carpentry place. It was intended to be a replacement for a similar chair within a manor home. The story goes that two brothers began arguing over inheritance, Toth's troubles, and one struck the other with stereotypically an empty bottle of 80-year-old wine, killing him. The other was an armoire. I think that's what she called it. Just looked like a wardrobe to me. It belonged to a woman who passed of, we think, lung cancer, going off the description of her death. It was not a peaceful slipping into the night, with lots of choking and coughing up blood, but again it doesn't match what has been observed. Entropic entities typically reflect some aspect of how the person they're mimicking died, so with the woman the entity would affect breathing in some way, but bones exploding in the limbs? 2nd of November 1971, 9:35 p.m, Cardiff. I hate to say it, especially after the job was held for me, but I'm stumped. I did, after some experimentation, manage to get back into the house. The bodies of the family were, well, they've been laid to rest now. The trigger for the entity appears to be rapid motion and loud sound. My arm throwing the iron filings triggered its attack. I conducted the candle test on every piece of furniture I could find, but to no reaction. Researcher Southgate note, the candle test is one used by gamekeepers to identify inhabited objects. The simple explanation is that they light a candle upon the object they're investigating with a 10-minute lifespan. They then wait outside the building for the flame to touch the object. If the item is inhabited, the entity will react violently to the room the object is within. I was hoping that the pub's original closure would shed some light. However, it was a far more mundane story of bad finances. I would like to keep going, however the Order has other possible entities for me to investigate, and as they explained, if this is a new entity, which it appears to be, they are far more equipped to categorize it, though I did make one request. I asked that they name the entity Idiwydd Marw, after the pub. So, there we go. The pub itself was quarantined and under observation until 1992, when, due to a fire in the neighbouring building, it burned down. After this event, we attempted to provoke a reaction from the entity, however, it appears to have perished with the loss of the building. After a 5-year span of monthly checks, the plot was considered safe and the land put up for sale. It's now host to 2 semi-detached homes, which have reported no issues. We have literally thousands of reports just like this one. They are simply gathering dust, so if you find them educational, I would be happy to create more of these files. I think it's important for us to all acknowledge the difficult and often dangerous work that is done by the gamekeepers. Unlike with hunters, their position offers no glory, simply long and slow investigation that often ends with no answers. But that will be all for today. With Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom, thank you.